The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I went to elementary school during the peak of the DARE program. You hear the DARE program? Yeah, for those lucky enough not to have endured a week of DARE every year until the 8th grade. This program involved uniformed police officers coming to our school to warn us about the dangers of drugs and specifically those who sell them. The primary focus of the program was training us to refuse drugs when, not if apparently, but when they're offered to us. We did role-playing skits, assemblies, coloring pages, activity books that offered up dozens of potential scenarios when another person might try and pressure us to take drugs. And we learned all sorts of ways to give an emphatic no. When someone offers you drugs, you say, "No, I don't take drugs. Drugs aren't cool. That's not something my family does." We practiced over and over and over. "No, I don't do that. No, that's not what I'm about. No, I don't trust you. No." So when it came to that particular thief, I felt pretty well equipped. If he ever comes sneaking up to the pasture edges, whispering, "Hey, come this way, I've got a great idea," I won't fall for it. "No, they told me about you. I know your game. You're a thief. You come only to kill, steal, and destroy." No. But despite the fact that we had a whole week devoted to teaching nine-year-olds how to emphatically turn down meth, there weren't that many other thieves I was taught so clearly to avoid. No one ever said, "If a voice tells you you're not good enough, you must be perfect to be loved. Your self-worth is quantifiable in grades and trophies," you say, "No, I don't believe you. That's not my truth." Or if you hear a voice saying, "You really got to stay in that relationship with a boy who treats you bad because the alternative is being a girl without a boyfriend," you say, "No, that's not true. I don't have to listen to that." Maybe the thieves at the edge of your pasture sound a little bit different, but we've all heard them. The reality is that I've followed a lot of thieves out of the pasture. Everyone has. There's not a person on this earth that hasn't believed a lie, taken bad advice, followed a fraud. It's not hard to do. Every day, thieves come to the pasture's edges and call out to us. Some of them are external. Media built on outrage and hatred, online echo chambers, pressure from those around us. And some call to us from closer within, thieving voices of shame or apathy or greed. This, I have to admit, was tough for me to wrestle out of this passage. I've been assigned April 30th for a while, but every time I sat down with it, I heard Jesus say, "They will not follow a stranger. They will run from him because they do not know his voice." And I had this knee-jerk response, "Jesus, buddy, all due respect, you're wrong here. We don't run from the thief. We all hear that voice and follow it right to our destruction." But remember, Jesus likes to speak in parables. As I say with the children, the Bible is full of symbols. And what is a symbol? A story or a picture that helps us think about something else. We are not the well-behaved sheep in Jesus' parables. He's not making an observation so much as a suggestion. You might want to learn the shepherd's voice, the one that leads you into love, joy, peace, mercy, wisdom, because if you follow the other guy, you'll end up somewhere else. Okay then, great. The question becomes, how? Because it sounds pretty great having that inner familiarity with the voice of the shepherd, some inner sense that keeps us pointed in the direction of truth and love. Excuse me. But it is easier said than done. Resisting the call of the thief, picking out the voice of love in the cacophony of other voices is hard. Even the DARE program, with all its work and preparation, has a really abysmal track record of keeping kids off drugs. But notice that Jesus doesn't say that the sheep have to find the shepherd. They don't earn the shepherd's care by being impressive or especially pleasing sheep. They don't unlock access to the shepherd by doing all the right things. They only have to attend to what's already there, to follow a leader who is always present to them, to recognize a voice that has been speaking to them since before they were born. For those who don't know, I grew up Jewish, and growing up Jewish, you hear all these stories, we call them midrashim. Midrash is a story that's not directly from the scriptures, but has been folded in to our tradition over the years. This one comes from the Talmudic texts, which are a great time. It says that babies in the womb are all visited by an angel who teaches them the entirety of the Torah. Then, just before the baby is born, the angel touches them and they forget it all. Supposedly that's this dip under our nose. I don't know. But this is so, as a person goes through their life and they study Torah and they learn about God's commandments and God's love, they're just being reminded of something they already knew. And I think that's what Jesus is saying here about the shepherd's voice, the presence of God in our lives, that we're not finding it or conjuring it so much as recognizing it, tuning in to an already familiar voice. We know infants in the womb start hearing their mother and recognizing the voices around them from an incredibly early beginning. As David Benner writes in Opening to God, one of the book clubs over Lent that I suggested people join because it's awesome, as he says, and I've combined two quotes, so if you were in that book club, don't come for me, but he does say all of this. We do not pray so that we can get God's attention. We pray so that God can get our attention. The prayer conversation has already begun because God has already reached out, seeking our attention and response. Prayer can be the response of our spirit to God's spirit as we open the totality of our being to the God who resides in our deep center and longs to meet us there. To put it a little bit differently, in the church where I eventually converted to Christianity, the pastor, Pastor Zach, who's awesome, used the analogy of a radio antenna to explain God's presence. Pastor Zach explained that the radio waves that let us hear our favorite classic rock are always around us. But we don't hear them unless we have a radio tuned to the right station. And once we do, we can hear the music that was always already present. Okay, so again, the question is how? How are we supposed to tune those dials and find the one channel broadcasting God's presence in the absolute mess of other radio signals out there, some of them literal? Christina Bruce, who's a writer who writes about body acceptance, particularly for women and mothers, says our bodies have an innate sense of their own value, and that body critical or body negative voices that we hear are not true observations, but as Jesus would put it, the voice of a thief come to kill and destroy. She recommends this heuristic about ourselves or our bodies is true. She asks, how does it feel in your body? If you see yourself in the mirror, or you have a thought about yourself as you're getting dressed, and that thought feels like a cringe or a shudder, if it makes your gut coil or your chest tighten, if it feels avoidant or shameful, that's our body telling us the same thing that I was taught at DARE all the way back in the 90s. No, that's not true. I don't accept that. This isn't a new skill. It's a return to something we've always already known. Infants and toddlers have no self-consciousness about their needs, their bodies, their perfectly loved little selves. Whether or not we're literally taught by an angel in the womb, we are all knit together with God's love at the core of our beings. But we forget. That's the paradox of the parable. It even says in today's passage that the disciples didn't understand what Jesus was saying, but then I'm up here trying to explain it to you guys, so we're all out here doing our best. Jesus is always speaking in these weird stories, and I think this one captures that frustrating duality of being a flawed person or a confused sheep, someone who definitely doesn't want to get killed and destroyed, none of us do, but still end up following that thief anyway. Someone who, by our very nature, is familiar with the shepherd's voice, but still struggles to hear it. But combined with today's psalm, which was sung so beautifully by our choir and our guests, combined with today's psalm, the message is not one of frustration or failure. It's promise and hope. The shepherd is speaking to us, and we do all have a way to listen. For many of us here at St. Mark's, it's the music and the ritual and the beauty of this place. For some of us, it's sitting in stillness and silence. Talk to Alex about some of the stuff he's got going on here. For some of us, it's moving our bodies or admiring creation. That's why Father Matt isn't with us today. He's out on a bike ride. But most of us don't have a foolproof method, and we find ourselves endlessly pursuing God's presence, always readjusting those radio dials and trying to find that voice when the thief starts to crowd in. But that's what sheep do. They follow. Day after day, they go through the gate after the shepherd to find themselves once again in green pastures, by running waters, protected and comforted. The gate is always there. We can step through into the loving presence of God whenever we want. We already know the way through. We just have to look.